Guess what? They're here. It's whitefly time. Just like everything else, this hatch is late. Everything's been 1 to 2 weeks late. We got our first report of whiteflies hatching Tuesday night. Very, very light. It's Thursday while I'm doing this video now. And our guy Glenn was out this morning, and he said he saw a few stragglers flying around. I would expect this will be a full-blown hatch by this weekend. For those of you who asked, this hatch lasts about 2 weeks from very beginning to very end. And then typically you'll get maybe 5 to 7 days that are extremely heavy, where it literally reminds one of a blizzard. Right before dark, usually the peak of the hatch is maybe around 8:30, give or take. It will literally look like a snowstorm flying upriver. It's pretty crazy. It's a sight to see in of itself. In an average year, we're catching mostly, if not entirely, bass. This is going to be one of those 1 out of 5 years when it's nice and cool. With the water flow not being super low like it often is in the summer, and with the nights being in the 50s and the days so far have been averaging in the 70s, we are still at some trout-friendly temperatures. Just put away a whole bunch of whitefly type patterns today. We were waiting to see what the weather was or wasn't going to bring, and I'm overnighting a bunch in for tomorrow so I don't run out of flies this weekend. If you're coming out for the hatch, you want to get in place before the hatch. I'd be in the water by 7 o'clock at the latest. The crux of the hatch doesn't really come off till later. Usually you start feeding a few stragglers around 7:30, and around 8 o'clock it gets noticeably heavier, and it gets heavy fast. Usually it's at its heaviest around 8:30, and then it goes pretty heavy right into the dark and beyond. If you shine your light on the water, you will see it blanketed with spinners on a typical night as you get near dark. Our standard rig is a 2-fly rig. We got a bunch of different patterns here. It's hard to go wrong with something big and buoyant up front, like a big white wolf, and we often oversize it. The whiteflies average about a 12 on the Husi, sometimes a 14. We'll often use a bigger fly up front, as big as a 10 or even an 8 sometimes, and then trail something more along the lines of a size 12 or 14 behind it. Could be a spinner, could be a usual, could be a parachute Cahill, or some other sort of whitefly type pattern. With the 2-fly rig, and especially if you have a really bushy fly that's not aerodynamic like a white wolf up front, you're going to want to go to a heavier tippet. If you're trying to do 5 and 6x tippet, you're going to have a bad day. Usually go 3x on the leader to the first fly. Otherwise, you're going to spin your leader up and it's going to land in a ball. And then we trail about 18 inches of tippet off the hook bend onto a different fly pattern, typically something flush floating that may be harder to see. You want something up front that's not going to be too hard to see, either a wolf or a parachute or a usual or something like that. And then you can have something flush floating like an emerger or a spinner or something of that nature. If you want to fish before the hatch, you can also try swinging wet flies. A good pair would be big leadwing coachman, which would imitate nice Sinikia. You know, those are afternoon, late afternoon into mid-evening this time of year, and then pair it up with a light Cahill, and that would imitate the whitefly nymphs. They are a better than average swimmer compared to your typical mayfly nymph. Not as good as some, but better than others, so you can have a little fun doing that. I've also got some cream-colored flashback nymphs and some beadhead whitefly nymphs if you want to fart around with indicator nymphing before the hatch. Make sure you bring a headlight or a flashlight. You're going to want to stay till dark. This is one of these hatches. If you leave at 8 p.m., you're going to miss the whole hatch, literally. Stay till dark. If you can stay till after dark, stay till after dark. There will be fish rising long after you leave, whatever time that is. I see 0 chance of rain. It's going to be nice and dry from now straight through Tuesday. Should see the river dip under 1,000 sometime on Saturday. And definitely well under that by Sunday. So we are looking good. The flows are lining up. River's clearing up. The temps are trouty. The hatch is on. It's probably good that it was late, because if it came off on schedule, it would have been when we were blown out with high dirty water. So that's not the case now. We're finally catching a break with the weather. Thank God. This is a pretty cool hatch. It's worth a drive just to see it. It's pretty crazy. And it can bring, when the water temps are trout friendly like they are now, it can bring some really big trout to the surface, especially as you get close to dark. And don't be surprised to catch a bunch of smallmouth. I mean, virtually anything with fins on it feeds during this hatch, and that includes carp. Hope to see a bunch of you here this weekend.